Is your Dirt Devil vacuum not picking up the way it used to? Maybe the brush roller on the bottom just isn't spinning as fast as it is. Maybe it's bogging down. Maybe you're smelling a burning smell coming from underneath the vacuum. Well, don't worry. This video will help you fix that. Today we're going to show you how to change the belt on your Dirt Devil upright vacuum. Now please keep in mind, different Dirt Devil vacuums have different setups for how this works, and there are some models of Dirt Devil that don't require replacement belts at all. But if you have a cheaper Dirt Devil, similar to the Breeze Cyclonic you see in front of you, or one of the Power Max varieties, one of the Endura varieties, or maybe even an older Dirt Devil, then this tutorial will show you how to change the belt on that machine, at least most of them. So the first thing we need to do is, of course, get a belt. Now the good news is that if your Dirt Devil needs a belt, and if you are experiencing the symptoms that I've described, where the brush roll isn't spinning right, you're getting a burning smell coming from it, whatever the case may be, then you'll need to check to see if your model is even one where that would be an issue. Now, depending on your vacuum, there will be a couple different points on the vacuum where you can check this. Now, on some models, it'll be on the back somewhere. It'll actually say the type of belt that it takes. On other units, it will be down here where the sticker is by the base of the machine, and on some machines, it'll be underneath, and I'll show you that in a sec. The first thing we need to do is lie the machine down on its front, and then press the handle release pedal in order to push the head down into a flat orientation. Right here on this unit, you can see there is a marker right there that says Belt Style 5. So in the case of this machine, you need the Style 5 belt. This particular belt is Style 4 and 5 and works with some Phantom vacuums as well. So we've got that squared away. You can get these belts pretty much anywhere. I will link some in the description, ideally genuine if I can find them, but if not, secondhand belts should be fine. These belts on cheaper machines like this are basically just glorified rubber bands, so no matter what, they're going to need replaced about every 6 months, depending on your usage. Now, these Dirt Devils generally require belt changes a little bit more frequently, so on this particular machine, you'd want to change it every 3 to 6 months, just depending on your usage, and depending on whether or not you see these symptoms out of your machine. Other than, of course, the vacuum, a belt, and some hands, you're going to need a standard number 2 Phillips head screwdriver to remove the screws that hold down the bottom plate. Now, I recommend getting a magnetic screw tray. Ignore these other screws, but I recommend getting a magnetic screw tray because you can use that to keep yourself from losing the screws. It's not a necessity, but I recommend it because you can get a 2-pack for really cheap on Amazon. Link in the description, not affiliate. And you can use this for any other project after this, so it's not like it only works for your vacuum. So, on this particular machine, there are 5 Phillips head screws, which I've already removed, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this specific model of Dirt Devil. There's one right here, one right here, one down here, one over here, and one up here. So on my specific machine, there is 5. On your machine, there may be 3, there may be 6, or the bottom plate may be held on entirely differently, and you may need to find some other way to figure out how to take the bottom plate off on your Dirt Devil. But most of them are going to work in this general way. If you have questions about your specific model, then let me know in the comments below, and I may be able to help you figure it out. Now, of course, I don't own every vacuum, so I might not be able to help you if you have some really obscure model, but I can at least try. So we're going to take our screws, put them in our optional magnetic screw tray, and then now the bottom plate is held in with 2 little clips on this particular unit. So these clips are underneath, so while we're pulling off this base plate, we're going to lever off the sides, and we're just going to try to pull out these tabs without actually breaking anything. So in this case, just yank it right off, and these are plastic, so they should be bendable enough to not be able to break, but if they do, it's held on with screws, so it's not the end of the world. So now that we've got the base plate off, we're going to set it aside, and now we have access to the brush roller and the belt, of course, being the main topic of this video. So we're going to grab our brush roller and pull it straight out. Very simple. We're going to unloop the belt, and if you look right here, the belt is actually held on to this shiny metal piece that is sticking out from the motor assembly. That is called the motor shaft. So this is what the belt rides on, and the belt essentially bridges the gap between the motor shaft and the brush roller, because a lot of these cheaper Dirt Devils have motor-driven brush rollers. This is a standard brush roller that should spin freely. When you pull it out, it should spin like this. If it doesn't, then you may need to replace the brush roller as the bearings may have seized. You also want to check your bristles while you're here. If these bristles have worn down, you want to change your brush roller. But again, there's different versions for different models. While you're here, it's good practice to take any hair and strings that are wrapped up around your brush roller and just pull them straight off. If you've been replacing your belt on a semi-regular basis, there shouldn't be so much here that you need scissors, but if you do end up needing some and you have a lot of hair, it's not a big deal. Just run some scissors or a knife along this to cut the actual brush roll. Just be careful so you don't nick the plastic on the brush. So in this case, we only had a couple little bits of hair, so this is pretty much done right now. We're going to take the belt, and there's a little space. It's a very skinny space where the metal ends and the plastic housing begins. So we're going to take the belt and we're going to turn it so that way we can pull it underneath that gap and pull the belt straight out. So this is the particular old belt, and what we're going to do is we're going to compare it to a brand new belt to see if it has stretched, which I suspect it will have. So this particular set of belts that I got was a 2-pack, so of course we only need one right now, and we've got a spare for later whenever you need to change this again. So we're going to take the new belt and compare it to the old belt. Now a lot of people look at this and think that they got the wrong size belt, but no, this is correct. Assuming that this matches the model for your vacuum, then this is correct. The belt is supposed to be really tight when you put it on, so that way it creates good tension with the motor pulley and with the brush roller, because if it doesn't, hence when it stretches out because it's rubber, it will then slip and lose performance and potentially even burn through because it doesn't have enough leverage. So when this is stretched out, throw it away. We're going to take our new belt, and while we're in here, since there is some debris in here, it's a good idea to vacuum this out, not with the main machine because this is supposed to be unplugged, but if you ideally have another vacuum, you can clean out all this dust while you're in here. It's not necessary, but it's something you can do if you so wish. Alrighty, good enough for me. And now we're going to take the brand new belt and we're going to loop it around the motor spindle. So we're essentially just going to pinch it like this, so there's a little gap so we can hook that around that metal pulley. So we're just going to put it right next to it and hook it right around just like that. Now for the belt, you want to make sure that the writing is on the outside, because if you don't have the writing on the outside, then it could wear unevenly. Now we're going to take our brush roller. We're going to slide it in where this little round groove is. We're going to make sure to line that up because that's what the belt rides on. And in the case of my particular brush roller, there are two sides. There's one that's thinner and one that's thicker. The thinner side goes in first on both sides. And the vacuum may try to bounce around a bit while you do this. So it's going to take a little bit of force, but we're just going to put that in. And again, sometimes it'll flop about. Yeah, it's sometimes, what I do is I like to put it on its side, so that way I can grab this end piece and stretch it and force it into the slot that it goes into, just like that. So you can see now that's in place. The belt isn't quite lined up, so we'll go ahead and fix that. So I'm just going to grab the belt and pull it over a little bit so it's lined up. Okay, it's not perfect. Then we're going to take the small side on this side and push it in as well. So now that we've done that, we're going to grab our belt, since mine's a little bit off center. We're just going to spin it a few times so we can line the belt up, kind of guiding it to the center, because we want this belt to be centered. If this belt is not centered, it's going to wear unevenly and may get caught on this plastic, and with how fast it's spinning, it's going to burn up. And we don't want to waste our money on our belt. Now we're going to spin the brush roller a few times to make sure the belt is centered and good. So you want to make sure the belt is in the center where this motor shaft is. Make sure it's not touching this metal piece right here, this little guard, and make sure it's in the center of this round piece of the brush roller. If it's doing that consistently, then you're good. If it's not, you may have some problems with your housing, or your belt could just be defective. If that's the case, try the other belt. If it's still doing the same thing, then you may want to take it to your local vacuum shop to have it looked at, because it could be some other housing damage. So now we're going to take our bottom plate and we're going to snap it back on, because this particular model has two clips right here, so we're going to push those in first. There we go, we heard that click. We're going to push down everything else. just like that. Now we're going to take our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws, and then we're going to go ahead and put those in. There we go. Now all 5 screws are installed, and whenever you are tightening these screws, ideally use a manual screwdriver and make sure it doesn't have any scraping on the ends. You ideally want to use a good quality screwdriver. In my case, I didn't, so I was very careful not to strip out the screws because these screws are threaded right into plastic. So if you accidentally thread them or cross thread them improperly, if you thread them improperly or cross thread them, then you could potentially strip out the housing, and that would not be good for your future belt changes. So once we get all the screws back in, we want to double check again and make sure the brush roll is spinning by hand. And we should, whenever we wiggle it like this, we should feel the tension of the belt on the brush. So if we do, we're good to go. So now this machine is fully back together, so we're going to do one quick test with it. When it had the old belt on it, I noticed that it bogged down really bad on my living room rug. For whatever reason, whenever I would stop it, the brush would immediately seize and the vacuum would start producing a burning smell coming from the belt area. That's the belt actually burning through because rubber is flammable. So we're going to try this again and see how it reacts. Noise warning. So if you could hear the agitation from that, you can see the big difference that made. Because now you can hear the agitation properly because the brush roll is spinning at its proper RPM, and now the performance is much, much better. So that is the fix on how to deal with your Dirt Devil vacuum with a stretched out belt. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. If you did, consider liking or subscribing to Intellitech Studios. And if you don't want to do either of these things, well, I'm happy that you got your vacuum up and running, and hopefully you'll enjoy it for the next approximately 6 months until it needs this done to it again. So yeah, this was Intellitech Studios signing out. I will link the belts for this specific version in the description, but again, remember there's different types of Dirt Devil belts, so make sure to match those up with your unit, and if your unit doesn't have a marking for belts, then you'll have to look in the owner's manual, which you can probably still find by putting the model number on that back sticker into Google and finding the correct model number for your machine, and that will help you find the manual, a PDF download, and that will then let you figure out what belt it is, because usually it'll say in the manual. If it doesn't, and or if your machine has a separate brush roller motor and a switch to turn off the brush for bare floors, then that machine uses a serpentine belt that usually is not provided for sale, because those belts are generally not designed to break within the lifespan of the machine. So if those somehow did break, usually they wouldn't, but if they somehow did, then you may have a bit more of an issue. But for one of these more basic models, this should hopefully make it to where you're good to go. So I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Happy New Year's Eve if you are watching this right when it came out, and if you're not, well, whatever happy thing happened in your life. So I don't know what I just said there. Anyways, see you later.